Hello and welcome to Tenant Action Today, brought to you by Met Council on Housing, the citywide tenants union. If you believe in tenants' rights, if you want to help preserve the affordable housing we have, and reverse the phase-out of our rent protection laws, the next hour should be of interest to you. Among other things, you will be able to call in and ask a question about a problem you're having with your landlord or about your rights as a tenant and get an answer from a tenant attorney right here on the air. You will also get some of the latest news of interest to tenant advocates. Finally, you will learn how you can help the campaign to restore our rent protection laws, which are due to expire in a little over 8 months and are being phased out every time an apartment becomes vacant. My name is Michael McKee, a board member of Met Council on Housing and treasurer of the Tenants Political Action Committee. Throughout the next hour, we're going to give you information about sources of advice and information for tenants. Sometimes this will be on the bottom of the screen, sometimes on the full screen. You might want to get a pen and paper so you can write them down as we go along. Our guest for this program is Elizabeth Hay of the Legal Aid Society of New York. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yeah, and here we are in heating season and sitting in a freezing studio. So you're from the Harlem office, the
That's correct.
East Harlem, but it's actually, you call it the Harlem office.
And in fact, we cover all of Manhattan, although we are located
the entire borough.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and what kind of cases are you most likely to be dealing with?
Well, needless to say, and I'm sure it will come as no surprise to you or your viewers, the biggest demand is for representation in housing-related matters. Particularly people who may be facing eviction or whose landlords may be overcharging them, not providing basic services, using various tactics to get them out, particularly and especially if they live in rent-regulated housing.
We've seen really a very remarkable upsurge in aggressive attempts by landlords, and often they're speculators who buy buildings and pay commercially unreasonable prices for them. They pay too much money for these rent-regulated buildings, and then their whole marketing strategy is to force the tenants out, to buy them out, to harass them out. There was a very interesting article in the newspapers this week about the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, in fact we're going to talk about this later, putting a so-called tenant relocator out of business, a man who was hired by landlords who bought new buildings, and his job was to go around and bother people and harass them and, you know, threaten them and urge them to move and urge them to take buyouts. Have you seen that
Well, we certainly have encountered some tenants who have been offered buyouts. That's certainly not uncommon. Mm-hmm. And that's a very dramatic example. I think what we see more of, unfortunately, is the hidden undermining of rent regulation. We see far too many tenants who come in who are paying not necessarily exorbitant rents, and mind you, we represent only low-income, very low-income people, but whose rents are denominated or called preferential rents in their leases. Mm-hmm. But with a little research and history on the DHCR, Division of Housing and Community Renewals, rent registration records, you discover that the apartment may have been stabilized and somehow became unregulated, basically through an attestation of the landlord, sometimes with the very same tenant sitting in place, where a vacancy is claimed, where a vacancy never occurred. Or
they just register fraudulently.
They register fraudulently, and because the tenant is offered what is called a preferential rent, which is no higher, and the landlord assures them that, you know, it won't hurt them, and don't, you know, don't worry about
People
what
shut
it
up.
says.
They don't complain.
And so they don't have any reason to complain.
Yeah.
And then time passes, and if too much time passes, i.e. 4 years, there may be a problem in challenging the overcharge. So that, I think, is far more insidious and far more difficult to address. The dramatic cases...
it happens in low-income communities.
All
over the city.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be that there were very serious penalties if a landlord failed to register every year or if the landlord filed a fraudulent registration. I mean, the landlord could get really slammed. You could get your rent rolled back. You could end up owing treble damages. All of those penalties were stripped out of the law in 1993, and they substitute a $5 per apartment fine, which the agency doesn't even collect.
It's not,
I mean, they don't even
not much of a
fine.
threat, is it?
So
less than a slap on the
so
hand.
landlords know that they're not going to suffer any penalty if they don't register or if they file a fraudulent registration. It's really it's shocking. But we really do need to. That's one of the reforms we need next year in Albany, is to put the rent registration system back to where it was before the weakening amendments of 1993 and the tightening of the 4-year rule in 1997.
Well, that, and also to provide resources devoted to responding to tenant complaints, enforcing their rights, and also addressing the very limited recourse that they have in the courts as well, because with 4-year statute of limitations, and if the tenant is not aware of the overcharge, many tenants are deprived of any remedy.
And they're not aware that they have to file a complaint within 4 years.
Right, they may not be aware of that, or they may not be aware of where the illegality has taken place.
All they know is what the landlord tells them, and that's often not the truth.
Right, until it hits them in their pocketbook significantly, they may not take action.
Then they get a lease renewal at the legal rent instead of paying the preferential rent, and suddenly they're facing an $800 a month rent increase, which most people can't pay.
And it also has, it can have a bad effect for individuals who are either disabled or who are age 62 who apply for SCRE, the Senior Citizens Rent Increase Exemption, or DRE, the Disabled Rent Increase Exemption, because the policy of the agency apparently is if somebody is paying a preferential rent that is not guaranteed for the life of the tenancy, which few are, that they will freeze it at the legal regulated rent, which may be a much higher amount.
Yeah, which doesn't really help the tenant.
Right, right.
Yeah,
it may not be an affordable rent.
Exactly. Okay, before we take calls, a few things that you should know about Met Council on Housing. First, Met Council runs a tenant hotline every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1:30 to 5 p.m. Tenants can call 212-979-0611 during those hours and get advice from a live counselor. Also, Met Council on Housing has a weekly radio program called Housing Notebook on WBAI 99.5 on the FM dial. Housing Notebook is on the radio every Monday from 8 to 9 p.m. You can also listen on the internet at www.wbai.org. Finally, Met Council on Housing publishes the only tenant newspaper in New York City called Tenant Inquilino. Those who become members of Met Council receive the newspaper in the mail every month. An important point, Metropolitan Council on Housing is not and has never been affiliated with the Metropolitan Council on Jewish Poverty. They are completely separate organizations. Now, here are some latest news and announcements of interest to tenants. First, as we mentioned before, New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman took enforcement action against a so-called tenant relocator who was accused of harassing rent-regulated tenants into giving up their apartments and succeeded in putting him out of business. Attorney General Schneiderman sued Michael Pimienta and has entered into a settlement with him in which Pimienta agreed to pay a $40,000 fine and give up his, quote, relocation business. Tenants had complained to the AG's office that Pimienta had threatened them with eviction, followed them to work, and knocked on their doors at all hours of day and night to pressure them to accept a buyout so the landlord could convert the apartment to market rent status. Good work, Mr. Attorney General. Next, with less than a week to go to next Tuesday's statewide election, the question of whether the Democrats or the Republicans will control the New York State Senate next year rests with 6 competitive races north of New York City. All 6 of the Democratic candidates are pro-tenant, even though only 2 of them have districts that contain rent-stabilized housing. The 6 Republican candidates are being heavily funded by the New York City Real Estate Lobby. Tenant's Political Action Committee has contributed a total of $45,000 to the 6 Democrats and is recruiting volunteers to do get out the vote work for them this weekend and on Election Day next Tuesday. Control of the state Senate is critical because the state rent protection laws come up for renewal next June. According to Tenant's PAC, if the Democrats have the majority, tenants have a chance to win pro-tenant legislation. If the Republicans are in control again, tenants are in trouble. Mayor Bill de Blasio is giving tangible support to Democratic candidates, but despite promising to help his fellow Democrats take control of the Senate, Governor Andrew Cuomo is not making much of an effort. It is widely believed that the governor actually prefers a Republican state Senate. Finally, Met Council on Housing, along with many other organizations, including Common Cause New York, urges a no vote on Proposal 1 on the November 4th statewide ballot. This is a fake reform proposal put forward by Governor Cuomo and the legislative leaders in Albany that pretends to establish an independent system for redrawing legislative district lines 8 years from now. The next time the legislative lines must be reconfigured. In fact, the proposal, if approved, would amend the state constitution to allow the legislative leaders to do what they do now, to draw hyper-gerrymandered district lines to protect their majorities. No fake reform, vote no. And by the way, you have to turn the ballot over. The proposals 1, 2, and 3 are on the back of the ballot. So, now, you have a unit that also works with tenants associations.
We do,
and,
yes.
And that, so instead of representing an individual tenant, you will work with and represent a group of tenants.
That's correct.
Yeah, and how many associations are you able to represent at a time?
Well,
I mean, you can't represent everyone that you
That's
who
true.
needs representation.
Although we do have the capacity to take on more tenant associations, but they do need to be tenant groups. Individual tenants, do well to join with their fellow tenants on issues that affect a number of tenants in the building, if not all of them. And that can often be a challenge, coming together as a group. But
organizing is not easy.
That's absolutely true.
People have to learn to agree and disagree and work together.
That's true.
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can provide educational workshops for tenants in a building regarding their rights. And we do that quite often. We just need to hear from people if they're interested in having.
And what if some of the tenants in the building are not eligible, income eligible for your services, but
they don't,
say the majority are?
Then we can represent the group. It's really a question of whether a significant proportion of the tenants who are in the association and seeking our help are income eligible.
Do you have any relationships with any community organizations that basically come to you and say, we're working with a group of tenants and their problems A, B, and C, and we'd like you to represent them?
Well, certainly people do approach us and say, we think the tenants in this building need help. But again, we need to hear from the tenants directly. So we can certainly offer to come to a meeting if the agency that approaches us or the individual who approaches us who's trying to do the organizing. But certainly, yes, we have worked with tenant advocates who are not necessarily lawyers, but community organizers.
Right.
And,
I mean, you can't really, it's wonderful to have legal representation, but you really can't organize a tenants association without somebody helping you with the organizing initially. So an organizer, in a way, is even more important than a lawyer. So you don't have organizers on staff?
Not presently, no.
Yeah, but you have in the past.
In the past, yes.
Yeah, I remember those cuts, those budget cuts.
Right.
What year was that? Oh my God, that was terrible.
5
years ago, 4 years
well,
ago?
it may have been longer ago than that.
Yeah.
When I first came to Legal Aid in 1986, I think there was someone with, it was part of a special project with some special funding. But tenants, we can work with tenants to help them with some of the tasks, providing, survey instruments, helping them, take stock of what the conditions are in the building. So there are things that we can do to help support the tenants association.
And it's always more effective if people are working as a group than an individual. Like if you're trying to get repairs made or you're trying to get the heat back on, it's just common sense. I mean, a group of people is more likely to have success than an individual.
Absolutely,
So.
particularly with certain kinds of systemic problems, for example, problems with plumbing, problems with heat, problems with electrical wiring, problems with building-wide systems. Those kinds of things are very difficult to address individually. Even if you have violations placed on an individual apartment, it is in theory possible to get structural work done, for example, getting a pipe replaced, but it often
affects the
takes
whole building,
repeated,
or at least the
right.
line, yeah.
It takes repeated
Right.
trips to court, and it is much more effective if you have a group that is either acting to bring an HP proceeding or conducting a rent strike and holding their rent money.
Right.
That's a much more effective tool.
Okay, now we have a phone call. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, you're on the air.
First of all, you're the first public access that I ever watched, and I'm 70, and it's very informative. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it.
Number one, first question. Can I trouble you for the woman's telephone number or business phone number?
Well, the Legal Aid Society number is going to be up on the
she's
screen.
legal aid. Okay,
Yes.
That's perfect.
And that will be on the screen. I believe it's 577-3300. Is that right?
That's true, but
Yeah.
my office direct,
Yes.
the general number for the office is 212-426-3000. Unfortunately, I cannot handle individual calls, and I'm not the person who gives out the appointments for housing.
Because you
No,
have
this was
an
for a-
intake procedure.
This
Yes.
was for a group anyway. But
Oh.
now let me move on to my question.
Okay.
I'm a 30-year tenant. I've been harassed by my next-door neighbor's smoke for 20 years. The building just went smoke-free. She's continually smoking, and I think the building management is ineffectual. Can I successfully sue in small claims, at least on a habitability factor, and win?
When you said the building went smoke-free, what happened? Is this a co-op or?
Rental.
It's a
Straight
rental, and how is it that the landlord or the managing agent is able to impose a smoke-free rule?
They're not.
But you said they went smoke-free.
Right, but it seems like they are a lame duck society, and they can only.
So you want to know what you can do?
Right.
How would you advise the caller?
They are ineffectual. They keep passing the buck. They keep trying to neutralize me. They're just not they're ineffective.
Okay.
That is a tough question. In terms of small claims court, the jurisdiction of small claims court is limited. They can issue money judgments. They do not have the power to enjoin someone from engaging.
No, I get that.
Okay.
On a money judgment, would I win?
Well, the question is, what duty does your neighbor have to you not to smoke? Or what is in the lease or any other health regulations or law that imposes that duty on her? The fact, if you live in a private rental, unless the landlord has in some way made it a condition of the lease,
He did.
and I offer, if it's in the lease that you're not permitted to smoke,
It is.
then it seems to me that your recourse, to the extent that that is an enforceable provision, and I offer no opinion
Understood.
about that. It's an interesting question I don't know the answer to.
I don't
But
think anyone knows yet.
to the extent that it is an enforceable provision, and an argument can be made that that provision provides all of the tenants the right to the quiet enjoyment of their apartment, of the premises, which is, of course, part of what every tenant is entitled to. That even, I think, goes back further than a lot of the tenant protection
I'm
provisions.
waiting for the results.
So, under that theory, it seems to me that you can
I know it's
try
difficult.
to get the landlord to take action, and I understand
That
that's the
wasn't-
difficulty.
That wasn't my question.
I know. Your question is, you have a direct cause of action against your fellow tenant, and I don't know whether
That's
you
a
do.
toughie.
I think that possibly, certainly you should address to her or him something in writing saying, I can smell the smoke coming from your
No,
apartment.
she doesn't care.
You could then, I suppose, you could sue her. Whether you could sue her in small claims, you could try it. I don't know how those monetary damages
How would he prove damages?
That I don't know.
I mean, you know, that's...
you know, you could try it.
trying to figure
you
that
might
out.
get some kind of money judgment, but I have to say,
You don't
personal injury is, you know, it's sort of in the area of personal injury. You've been deprived. I don't know whether you would be able to do that, for example, if she was making noise, which is another very common nuisance factor.
The problem here is that in this kind of situation, whether it's this kind of nuisance or something else like noise, it's only the landlord has the standing to take action against the tenant to enforce something like that. And, you know, smoke-free is sort of a new frontier. Nobody really knows how this is going to play out legally. But the problem you have is pressuring the landlord to take action against her, and it sounds like you've tried that and they don't want to do that.
Correct.
For you to take action against her is much more difficult. Certainly, he couldn't take her to housing court. I mean,
yeah, housing court, she has no duty to you under the various housing laws. This would fall in the nature of, you know, someone who is depriving you of the use and enjoyment of your apartment, but whether a court's going to put a value on that, I don't know.
Well, let me put it a better way. Has a decision ever been rendered in small claims court in a monetary decision?
You
I don't
know,
think we know.
I used to know all of the decisions. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I have to be honest.
Popular thing that.
let me ask you a question.
Let me
ask you a question. Does the smoke come in through cracks or through the window, or how do you?
Windows and air conditioning vent.
So.
She's a downtown apartment. I'm the common wall uptown apartment. Wind goes uptown and presses against the face of my building.
So,
Also, if you're sensitive to smoke, I understand. I can smell.
Yeah, I can
you can
smell
smell cigarette smoke. You know, it's
Yeah.
some amazingly small number of particles per million. You know,
and it's
inches
very
of-
upsetting to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
that way.
Sounds like I'm up for the creek with the proverbial paddle.
I think your solution, and it sounds like you've tried this without success, is to keep pressuring the landlord to take action against her, because it really is the landlord's duty. Obviously, the landlord doesn't want to do this. These are tough cases for landlords to win,
Especially
which
since
is
she's
why
a
they don't want to.
Especially since she's a 25-year tenant.
Well, in that case,
Right.
you'd probably be happy to get her out.
That's
and
true,
deregulate
but
the
a
apartment,
court may also
yeah.
be somewhat reluctant,
Absolutely.
particularly if you
Yeah.
get a judge that smokes.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I think
it's very difficult because
I see him smiling without his lips moving, but yeah, I get it. I'm a smart guy.
It's a tough situation. It's a very difficult kind of. It's like noise complaints.
No, it's still in a
You
gray
know,
area.
noisy neighbors. It's one of the hardest things to deal with.
No, I understand, but hello? Are you
Yep.
still
yes,
there?
we hear you. We hear
okay.
you.
Thanks for calling. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye. I don't know.
That
you
was
know,
a tough one.
Yeah, and smoke-free is really sort of like a new frontier. Nobody
yeah.
really knows how this is going to play out
mean,
legally.
Right. In my building, the landlord, it's now gone condo. I'm still a rental tenant. But there are signs in the hallway saying no smoking in the hallway under penalty of fine.
Wow.
Who's going to impose the fine
Yeah,
and how are they going to
enforce
yes.
it? Exactly. Okay, now we have another call. Hello?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question.
Please.
If you own property in another state, can your landlord penalize you and you in a rent-stabilized apartment in New York City?
Not if you're using the apartment as your primary residence. You could own 15 pieces of property in other states as long as the rent-stabilized apartment is your primary residence. You want to explain primary residence?
Well, whether your apartment is your primary residence depends in large part on where you live most of the time, meaning more than half of the year. That's a really important factor. There are things that landlords look for because now so much data is available online. So, for example, if you are registered to vote in another jurisdiction other than New York, if you have a car registered in another jurisdiction, although that is circumstantial evidence, it's not evidence of where you actually live. If you are earning substantial amounts or income on a regular basis somewhere far outside New York where you also own this property, those are all the kinds of things that probably there are public records of and that landlords can access through a fairly simple internet search. And landlords do bring non-primary residence proceedings or refuse to renew leases if they get a hold of this kind of information. But the real question is, where are you actually living and staying? And even if you have to spend some time away from your primary residence, that in and of itself is not an indication that it's not your primary residence. There have been some cases in which someone had to go care for an elderly parent, for example, or they were hospitalized for a period of time or in a rehabilitation facility, and the tenants have prevailed in those circumstances. But spending a good deal of time in another state or another city where you are employed and where it keeps you out of your apartment for the better part of the year, that's going to be a problem.
Okay, I'm just saying, say if I go for 3 months, come back, 3 months, come back.
Well, the standard is 183 days. If you live in your apartment for more than 183 days or more, which is essentially half the year, that alone is not the only test, but it's an important test. If you go back and forth to another property, like sometimes people inherit a home from their parents, and you're still owning it, and maybe you have a relative living there, or you're renting it out, or maybe you go and stay there from time to time to visit relatives, as long as you are staying half the year in the apartment in New York City, and as long as you don't do things like register to vote in another city or another state, or, well, automobiles is a particular thing because there can be circumstances where, for professional reasons or other reasons, people don't need a car in New York City, but you need a car if you're living in Iowa, out in the country. So there are a number of factors, and if you are concerned about this, and if you think the landlord might be planning to take some kind of action, you might want to consult with an attorney and go over all of the facts, which we don't want to do on the air anyway.
Because your landlord might be listening.
Yeah. Go over all of the facts, lay it all out, and get advice from the attorney about what could you do to strengthen your case so that you don't risk losing the apartment. If you're receiving mail there, if you're banking there, if you're voting from that address, the more things you do, if your driver's license is at the apartment, every document you have of that nature should essentially be at your rent-regulated apartment and not somewhere else. The more you do elsewhere, the more the landlord might have some kind of, wedge to start some kind of proceeding against you. Many tenants are not aware that if you're not using the apartment as your primary residence, that's grounds for deregulation. So they don't have to renew your lease. But if you're worried about it, you might want to give Met Council a call and get a referral to an attorney and sit down with an attorney. Cost you a couple of $100. You'd have to pay a consultation fee probably, but then it would give you some peace of mind, and it would let you know things that you might be able to do that would strengthen your case and avoid a problem down the road. If he sues you on for non-primary residence, if he says, I'm not renewing your lease, and then takes you to court, that's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars in legal fees. So you might want to, head him off at the pass, if you will.
Oh, okay, then. So other way, keep everything here in New York and just keep everything.
Everything here.
Well,
the mere fact that you own an apartment, own a house somewhere else is not going to be a problem, if that's all it is.
Yeah, the thing is...
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
Okay, it's okay. The thing is, in the other states, they have me as a vacation home, and the taxes are higher. If I'm a primary resident there, the taxes are cut in half.
You want to pay taxes in New York at the resident rate. You want to pay New York City income tax and pay it at the resident rate.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yes.
Yes, there may be.
There are other states where it's cheaper, and people say, well, I'll pay taxes in Florida because it's cheaper. They don't know they're putting their rent-regulated apartment at risk.
I thought what you were saying, though, is that possibly the taxes on the property that you own in the other states are higher if you're not a resident. Is that right?
Right.
Right. Well, you're going to have to pick your poison.
Yep.
Because if you go for, and in fact this leads to something I was going to say, for certain kinds of taxes or registering a car or other things like that, it is economically better if you are a resident, or it may be a requirement in order to get a driver's license that you say you are residing in that state. And in order to get insurance, which might be cheaper for a car or for a driver, it might be cheaper to say you're a resident of that state. But if you make those kinds of declarations, those can be used against you if the landlord says you're not using the New York apartment as your primary residence. In addition, those things alone are not enough if in fact you are actually spending a major part of your time at one or more of the other. It doesn't have to be just one residence. If you own more than one property and you're spending time equally between them, but the New York apartment you're only spending about a third of your time in on a yearly basis, if the landlord goes to the trouble of engaging in surveillance, which some landlords do, and, you know, keeps track of how many times you're going in and out of the apartment.
Sometimes they hire detectives.
They hire detectives, and if they have a record of that, or if they have building personnel who say they only see you certain months of the year and the rest of the time you're not there, that can be a problem also. So it's more than just the paperwork. You know, it's gotten to the point where landlords actually pay for surveillance for private detectives, and they may, particularly if the apartment is a valuable one, as many are, they may actually, you know, get evidence that you're not there.
Okay?
Oh, okay then. Thank you.
It's a complicated issue, and you might want to talk to an attorney.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
And you have to, as Elizabeth says, you have to pick your poison.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to take one more call, and then we're going to show you the film. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
We have an issue in my building. We have a new landlord. He purchased the building a little over 2 years ago. Since his purchase of the building, we do not receive any heat in the wintertime. Matter of fact, it is 53 degrees outside right now. It is after October 1st, and there's not any heat in my building, in the entire building. There are children here. There are seniors here. Last year, we called 311 every day from October through the whole winter. We had HPD inspectors here. Unfortunately, the days they would come would be during the daytime, 2 or 3 days after the initial calls were made, and it wasn't as cold. And we were desperately trying to have them come in the evening when the problem occurs and we do not have heat. We need to know what other...
Let me ask you a question. Number
Yes.
one, do you have a tenants association?
Yes.
Okay, number two, have you taken any action of your own, for example, suing the landlord in housing court?
That was my question. I don't know how to proceed with that.
Okay.
I don't
It's
know
a
if I need
fairly
to do an order
simple
to show
proceeding.
cause. I'm sorry.
No, this is a proceeding where you sue the landlord.
Okay.
On conditions, on, you know, in this case, to get the heat back on.
Yeah.
You want to explain about HP proceedings?
Yes, they're called HP, which HP just stands for Housing Part.
I know.
They're enforcement proceedings. And the clerk can provide you with the forms. They may even be available online on the Housing Court website. I think the real issue is, you're right, it is difficult sometimes to get the inspector there at the right time. They come a few days afterwards, it's
Correct.
a little warmer, maybe it's,
Correct.
you know, at the 68 degrees or whatever it is that. So what we usually advise tenants to do is get thermometers and keep records.
Keep a heat
them on
sheet.
a daily basis. Make the calls, as many tenants as possible, every single day that the temperature is below what is required legally at night or in the morning, either one. even if he's sending up some heat during the day, if the temperature at night is dropping down below what it's supposed to be, or what the can't just be comfort level, because some people are cold, you know, even when it's 72.
Correct.
But
We've done those things.
okay, if you've done those things, then I think, you know, if tenants as a group can go to housing court and begin that HP, you may also be able to get the court to direct inspections on, you know, a more regular basis. You can have inspections scheduled. Of course, I know that the landlords, if they know when the inspection is going to take place, they turn the heat up. But if you persist, you may get some improvement.
Have you had violations? I mean, have they placed violations against the building?
They have violations. We also had a violation for scalding hot water.
Okay. Well, that could the fact that there are violations on the building helps you with an HP.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, are you working with any community group that is helping you with the organizing?
Well, we had thought our assemblyman was helping, but that didn't work out too well.
What neighborhood are we talking about?
I'm sorry?
What neighborhood are we talking about?
Harlem.
East Central? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you might want to approach a community group, or you could even call Met Council.
Okay.
And ask for an organizer to come to the building and meet with you. There are a number of groups in and around Harlem that have organizers on staff who can come and sit down with you at a tenants meeting and help you figure out how to move forward. I think this is clearly a logical. You should bring an HP against this landlord.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the second year you're going into the heating
Yes.
season, and you've got children and old people in the building.
Right.
And that's you know, obviously an HP is a fairly simple proceeding, and you don't need a lawyer.
But
Okay.
So,
and my question,
although with a group, you might want to have a lawyer.
the group, right, and
but we need, when you say the group, we need to take majority of the people that are in our tenants
You don't-
association, or is it just
you-
one person that goes down?
One
and files
person can
paperwork?
bring an HP, or
Okay.
a group can bring an HP.
Okay.
There is a filing fee, but if you are low income, you can get the court to waive the filing fee.
Okay.
And obviously, it's more effective if you do this as a group.
Okay.
and
but-
we can my office also has a housing development unit that does represent tenant associations. And if you have a tenant association, you do need to agree on who your representatives are going to be. And if you call my office,
Your office is the legal aid office?
the Legal Aid Society,
Okay.
we're located on East 106th Street.
Yes, I know.
We can talk to your tenant group about what strategically you can do, including but not limited to an HP proceeding.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so
Take
much.
action. Don't. I
Yes.
mean, don't let them get away with this.
Don't
It's-
stay
no,
cold
we
this
were trying
winter.
to do it last year,
Yeah.
but we just didn't, have enough information.
There are sources of help out
It
there.
did help us out a lot, though.
There are sources of help and advice out there. You just need to tap into them.
I will be calling these
Okay.
numbers first thing in the morning.
Okay.
I thank you very, very much.
Thanks
You're
for calling,
welcome.
and good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Boy, 2 years in a row, I mean, that's just disgraceful. Okay, before we take another phone call, we're going to show you a short film about the efforts of the Coalition for the Homeless to help homeless New Yorkers have enough to eat. This film is made by Alessandro and Maeve Cavadini, a father-daughter team who call themselves the Mitchell-Lama Film Project. We'll be back when it's over.
Sure. My name is Juan de la Cruz, and I am the director of the Grand Central Food Program. The way we have it set up is that we have a group of volunteers. Each of them comes out on a specific night. So my Friday crew is usually my Friday crew, my Monday crew. In all, we have 3 routes. So we have an uptown route, we have a downtown route, and we have the Bronx route. Hey, John. Each of them, I would say, probably serves anywhere from 350 to 400 people. And on a nightly basis, we do about 1,000 meals on all 3 routes. The challenge is that we start preparing the food at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's just these big vats of soup, and they take quite a bit to get cooked. So by the time they start packaging them, it's about 1 o'clock.
Basilio Contreras, I'm the soup kitchen supervisor. 21 years I've been working here. I mean, we're doing a good deed here, feeding the people in the street is something good. We could do so much. We could keep everybody's piling up in the street, more people, what we gonna do? We're gonna have to get a bigger kitchen. Yeah, because every year the rent goes up 2%, 4%. I guess the landlord wants to get rid of the tenants in there to fix the building, make it condominium. What's gonna happen with the people, man? Well, I had a friend that was a driver, and he recommended for me to drive because they needed, there was an opening. So I started driving, and from driving, I started working in the kitchen.
My name is Lord Bibaluli. It's the second charge. I've been here 15 years. Basilio, his wife, he was my friend, my wife friend. And they need somebody that time for part-time. I worked like 6 years here part-time. From that time, somebody moved up and I jumped straight to the assistant second charge.
Yeah, Mr. John, I'm here like this year gonna be 11 years. Yeah, I was maintenance in the building, helping them every day. So the end, you know, they hired me here.
You know, a lot of the clients that we work with, some of them are housed. It's low-income people that can't afford to, you know, pay for their food, you know, pay for their rent, pay for their gas, pay for all the necessities. So that's where we come in and help out with at least the food portion of it. Also keeping in mind that it's a, you know, it's a meal. They still have to fend for the rest of the day. So it's not like their foods are all taken care of because we are not able to serve them 3 meals a day. It would be a great goal. Unfortunately, we're not set up to be able to handle that. The way our kitchen produces the food and the way our vans and our volunteers, it's really something that might be nearly impossible to get done. But the challenge is that, you know, it's multi-layered. It's not just as simple as placing somebody in a house and everything problem's going to be resolved.
Okay, thank you. We're donating food to the coalition across the street. Good partner with us. We work here in 345 Park Avenue, so barbecue for some of the offices in the building.
Whenever you're ready. Gabriella. Nice to meet you, James. So James, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this for 3 years.
And Adam, you just started, right?
I did. But I go out 3 nights a week. I go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of every week. So James will probably do like soup, and if you do like one side thing, James, like oranges or something, whatever's next to soup.
I'll organize the back and I'll let you know.
Yeah. We're gonna have to organize with all that extra food. How you doing tonight, fellas? My name's Adam. If you guys have any questions, need anything, let me know, okay?
Adam?
Yes, sir, Adam.
Adam.
There you go.
Y'all should keep Adam with y'all. He's cool.
So at the next stop, it's going to be, they're going to split them into 2 lines. It's going to be men and women. The men go first because the men are actually homeless, and they're a little bit more well behaved than the women. The women are just mostly low income, so we prefer to feed them first. Everyone gets food anyway, but the men go quicker. The women are going to try to come back for seconds and thirds, which we're not supposed to give them.
And how are you able to identify who's homeless versus who's low income?
It's not actually like we know for a fact, but the men have complained about that in the past. that they're actually homeless and that the women are just coming from low-income apartments around the area. Except for our wheelchair friend first. The first person we feed is these two right here.
I would say out of the 1,000 people, you're probably serving 300 to 350 who are low income, and then the rest are usually homeless. So here, we're serving about 200 people. Out of those 200 people, you probably have maybe half of those guys who are messengers, who are delivery people, who are people who are doing that kind of work. And the rest of the guys are strictly homeless.
That's just our famous Chinatown stop, so everybody will understand now when we say Chinatown.
So you guys are downtown.
Yeah, we went
You guys got to see Chinatown then.
We did.
Oh, that's fun. I like Chinatown. It's fun. It's interesting.
It seems difficult considering the language barrier.
It is. It is.
A big part of what we do is not only give food. It's also the follow-up. It's also the case management. It's also, offering different services. With that population right there, it's a little bit tougher because of the language barrier. So we have tried, we've gotten the city council involved. We've gotten other agencies involved. But yet we're still kind of trying to navigate that, and it hasn't gotten there yet. So it is something that we do have interest in, and but for the time being, getting them what they need, which is the food, is the most important for us. In the Bronx, it's going to be a little bit different because, as you might know, a lot of the homeless always are in like the major cities, the major financial areas, because they're trying to get, a lot of the programs are there. People can panhandle there. So a lot of the people in the Bronx are going to be low-income people who might be housed, but are not, are not able to provide for their goods.
It's a little bigger. You can make an announcement here before you go.
We get funding from the city council, and a lot of different members wanted us to stop in their districts. So that's how we stop in District 1, District so-and-so, and so-and-so. So it pretty much encompasses the whole east to west of the Bronx.
Thank you, baby. God bless America. Long I love.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, thank you.
Hey, you've been around here a while. The old lady had the dreadlocks. What happened? I heard she got sick.
I don't know.
You don't know? Oh. Hey!
Can I ask you a question?
What's going on?
That's it.
How you doing though?
I'm doing fine.
Thank you. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
You up here these days?
Yeah, I'm up here. This is where Megan's at.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah,
I heard.
Yeah.
Need soup?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I take the milk. Come on, let's go. Come on.
Soup?
No, soup.
Just soup?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Right?
Have a good night.
Okay. Have a good night. Oh yeah? There's a few people here. This is Lincoln Hospital. Just tell them to step off to the side and shoot the line. We'll take care of the second meal.
Thank you, lady.
Bye.
Somebody right there. Next time, just come around and skip the line, okay?
We got a brown bread.
Oh, there you got the brown one. Yeah, he likes the brown one.
There you go.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Like you up right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chicken noodle. No. There you go.
That is so pretty.
Yeah.
Ryan. All right.
Let's go.
Yeah, there you go.
You gonna eat all that?
I have good appetite, but to a certain extent. No, I'm gonna see if I can
You know some guys.
give them out of whatever.
Yeah, that
Do you
works.
want any bread to go with that?
Huh?
Do you want any bread to go with that?
Oh no.
Okay.
Okay. You have a
See?
good night, man.
Yeah, you too.
Good to see you again.
Appreciate it. I was telling them, but they got impatient. I
Just
said,
leave
look,
it there.
you hang
That's
around
fine.
sometimes, you guys get in a little bit later, but still look at all the stuff that
We'll
you
be
have.
here, and if not, we'll come by and tell you we don't have anything.
Yeah, I know you guys do that. That's very fortunate.
I'm not gonna leave you standing out here.
I heard your name was Carlos?
Yeah.
Christy. It's good to meet you.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, you know, that's thoughtful.
You have a good night, okay?
Bye, Carlos. Good night.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Well, I hadn't seen that before.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen it either.
Apparently, the Coalition for the Homeless has been doing this for quite a number of years, and I never knew that. I didn't know that that's something that the organization actually did. But it's quite an impressive operation. I mean,
it's an impressive operation, and it's also quite moving to see how many people don't have enough to eat. The food that they're giving, as they said, is not a full day's ration of food.
It's not going to stop you from going hungry if that's the only meal you get in the day. Yeah, it's amazing how, you know, the richest country in the world, and we just, you know, don't take care of people.
Perhaps
really
a bit poor in spirit, however, if we let things go to that degree.
I'm afraid sometimes that's the case. You know, Elizabeth, the woman who called before about the building that didn't have heat and the HP, you know, as a tactic they could do, I was thinking after she hung up, it's true you don't need a lawyer to do an HP. I mean, tenants do it all the time by themselves. I've heard stories of tenants who've gone to court on an HP by themselves without an attorney and done very well. And
absolutely.
And I've heard stories of tenants who've not done well and got very frustrated. But with a group, it seems to me you might be better off with an attorney, just in terms of
coordinating it, yes, developing a strategy, having people prepared to testify, particularly if the inspection record is spotty or there appears to be. And I've seen this, we've seen it happen where the landlord manages to turn the heat on in advance of the inspection. Whether the
a very common thing.
Yes. And, you know, again, if what's happening is that the boiler is being turned off or down or the heat lowered every night when an inspector isn't likely to show up, that's going to be harder to
We really
address.
should have, I mean, there should be nighttime and weekend inspectors. This is just, I mean, like the buildings department, for example, with tenants who go through horrible construction situations where they're basically living in a construction zone. You call to complain on the weekend, you have to wait until Monday for an inspector to come. Why can't they have people on duty? Or if the landlord's violating the permit and doing construction at night, you know, up until midnight, why can't the buildings department have someone assigned to go out at night? It just doesn't make any sense.
Well,
the same thing with heat complaints.
Right. I mean, maybe under the current administration, those are suggestions
These are things
that may
we might possibly get people to listen
things
to.
that didn't seem possible previously are becoming possible. I know more resources are being devoted to try to prevent homelessness.
Certainly the mayor and the city council this year in the budget did put money into programs that had been starving for funds under the Bloomberg administration. But there's so much more that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I really do appreciate your coming by, and I hope that group gets in touch with your office.
I do too, and I hope we're able to help.
What days do you do intake? Do you have intake
more
than once?
For tenant associations, they can call any day of the week. They're going to talk to someone or get a call back from someone who will find out from them what stage they are in, you know, whether there is an association, whether representatives can come in and talk to us. That's usually the initial consultation. But like I said, we also do some tenant group educational workshops. So there's not one size fits all, but in general, call, ask to speak to someone in our housing development unit. Don't worry if you don't remember the name.
They'll figure it
Say
out.
you are, you are a tenant and there are a group of tenants in your building. If you've organized and you have elected representatives, then we can certainly talk to you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure.
You've been watching Tenant Action Today. We're on every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. If you want to get involved in the fight to strengthen our rent laws, please get in touch with Met Council on Housing. Thanks for watching, and please tune in again next week, and don't forget to vote on Tuesday.